Hi, this is Quarian Anarchy, and I'm here, and this is Marcus Pulis, and I'm here with Chad Lemoine and Nicco, and today we're going to talk about some important stuff with Bitcoin and probably dive into some ramifications about how that involves the world right now, and specifically in finance, but and also in some of the upsets and all that. But before we get into that, go ahead and hit the little bell icon, subscribe, like this episode. Also, share it if you like it. Go to the store, buy you some T-shirts, buy a tapestry, do all that. So this week, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We've tried doing like where Chad and I specifically, and now we've added Nicco, would just tear an article apart. We're not going to do that this time. I'm going to read through the article and get the basic points, and then we'll start talking about it a little bit more. We'll see if that works better, see what we like, and move forward. So the first article, or the only article for this week that I have, um, caught my attention about the end of last week. And it's by a guy named Billy Bambro from Forbes magazine. It's called Pentagon Documents Reveal the U.S. has planned for a Bitcoin rebellion. Bitcoin has struggled to find support in the United States government, with President Donald Trump, along with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, leading the criticism. Now it's been revealed that the U.S. Department of Defense has wargamed scenarios involving a Generation Z rebellion that uses Bitcoin to undermine and invade the establishment. In the Pentagon war game, young people born between the mid-1990s and early 2010s use cyber attacks to steal money and convert it into Bitcoin. Documents published by investigative news site The Intercept revealed. Called the 2018 Joint Land, Air, and Sea Strategic Special Program, or JLAS, the war game is set in 2025 and is intended to reflect a plausible depiction of major trends and influences in the world regions. The scenario, which echoes recent protests in the US and around the world against racial injustice, involves some members of Generation Z who see themselves as agents for social change and believe that the system is rigged against them, begin a global cyber campaign to expose injustice and corruption and to support causes it deems beneficial. The group, called Zbellion, encourages cyber attacks against organizations that support the establishment, funneling stolen cash into Bitcoin to make small, below the threshold donations to worthy recipients and Zbellion members. The program, which also reportedly wargamed scenarios involving Islamist militants and anti-capitalist extremists, was conducted by students and faculty from the U.S. military war colleges, the training ground for prospective generals and admirals. Bitcoin has increasingly been adopted by Wall Street and the world's biggest financial institutions since its 2017 price explosion, but remains a tool to fight government control. The Pentagon war game documents have been revealed after Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz called for the government to freeze the money of the demonstrators after countrywide protests over the killing of George Floyd turned violent this month. One of the most important tools in the authoritarian toolkit, this is a quote, is the ability to freeze the funding of legitimate political dissent. End quote. Nathaniel Whitmore, a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency consultant and strategist, previously said. By separating the infrastructure of money from the infrastructure of state power, Bitcoin makes it much harder for this type of politically motivated confiscation. Bitcoin has seen a surge of interest in recent months due to the coronavirus pandemic and never before seen levels of government borrowing. In the quote, in the wake of unprecedented central bank action around the COVID-19 crisis, it seemed like the most relevant narrative of Bitcoin in 2020 was as a hedge against inflation, Whitmore said. It appears, however, that its capacity for censorship resistance might be just as relevant. So that's the end of the article. And there's an awful lot to tear into. I kind of like maybe Chad, if you want to dive in first, and then Nicco, and I'll bring my own turn to it.
Yeah. So, oh shit! I wasn't recording. Well, all right, I'm recording now. Damn it! I went one step short of actually recording. Oh well. You're recording, and that's a good thing because this we wouldn't have to do that whole thing over again. Anyway, sorry, folks. So what's always funny is it's given this. Did you notice how the article starts off with concerns over like hacking and financial attack,
right?
And then it evolves into, hey, who are those people protesting? Lock up all their money.
Right.
Like it's just like whoa. This is, we're not talking. What you said first was like you're worried that people are going to steal money and then like hide it in Bitcoin because it's harder to track. What you're saying now is we want to seize the assets of people who haven't stolen it, but who are saying stuff or doing stuff that we don't approve of. And in this case, like in a lot of these cases, it's not even something where they're harming someone or destroying anything or anything like that. This is just a like a political dissent, a crushing of a rebellion or anything like that they are that they seems like they're more concerned with the rebellion part than they are with the financial attack part and the theft. The theft that they are claiming as like the sort of the backbone for this, or at least a large part of it. Maybe not the backbone. Maybe the rebellion part is the thing that scares them the most. So it brought me to, and Nicco probably remembers this, when we were on one of those Saturday calls where Brody was talking about his travels in China and how in China they have this app that you have to use. It's called it's called WeChat. It's basically like WhatsApp or Telegram or something like that, whatever. But it's a like Cash App sort of thing.
It's their life. It's their entire life.
It's everything. Like you can't buy a hot dog from a vendor on the corner of the street with cash. You can't buy anything with cash. And I was trying to explain this to my wife the other day. She was like, "Well, but what you could do is you could get like someone to buy your food for you, and then they could bring it to you, and you could just give them cash." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. Cash doesn't exist. Like it's all electronic. Like you have to use this thing." And so I don't know if you've watched Black Mirror, like the previous seasons. So did you see the one where they have like so first they have the social credit score episode with Bryce Dallas Howard, where she's like she's trying to boost her social cred so she can be popular again and all this stuff and get more. You basically get more shit. Like your life is better if you have a higher social credit score. But it's one of those cycle things where but your life is better because you have things too, so it's like you get more things if your life is better, but you have to have things. It's like that old conundrum with like, well, to get this job you need experience. Like, well, I need a job first before I can get the experience, so help me out. But they had that one, and then they had a couple of other ones. One was the one where you could actually like block people and you couldn't see them anymore. They were just like fuzzy. It's like this fuzzy thing, and you couldn't tell if they were your friend or not anymore, because once you blocked them, that was it. It was just like, blocking someone on Twitter. Like they could be screaming and going off on you and everything. You can't hear it, or it's more like muting them. They're still there, but you can't tell that they're there. And so if you think about it, think Demolition Man and that underground society and that WeChat sort of phenomenon, where because they tried this when the Corona stuff, when they started printing all this money, immediately into a lot of this legislation as they're passing these, there's always a crisis. There's always an emergency. What does it involve? It involves jamming a bunch of shit into legislation that has been waiting for an opportunity to be jammed into legislation. And one of those things was a digital currency, a federal digital currency, so they can get off of having people, and they use the virus as an excuse because money is an easy way to transmit this stuff. Right. And so the digital currency, who do you think is going to be in control of that, and how? And so then when you take that to the next step, okay, so now we have this digital currency that we all have to use, and we all have to have this little app on our phone, or we have to have like a QR code that we bring around with us, and they go beep and they scan it, or it's on a card, or whatever the case may be. All they have to do is, if they want to, you say something they don't like. They do it already with YouTube and Patreon and PayPal and Square and all that. If they don't like your business doesn't exist anymore as far as they're concerned. And I'm just waiting for when like Visa and MasterCard start just denying people, like, your political stances are not okay, therefore you will not be able to have money anymore. And at least at that point, you can go mow lawns for cash and find ways to do stuff. But as soon as they go to something like this, and that's why like Bitcoin is so important, and all of these decentralized, impromptu cryptocurrency efforts are so important. And I'm partial to Bitcoin. I'm more, I wouldn't say necessarily I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but I'm pretty damn close, because it's, when you think about Satoshi's vision and only having 21 million ever in existence, and having this natural decay curve of the ability to mine it, so that it's this asymptotic, you've got 21 million is up here, and as we get closer to it, we keep having these halvings to where the mining power that it takes doubles to get a Bitcoin. So it just gets increasingly more difficult to get what's left, so that, the first 1,000 were really easy to mine. The next 1,000 were a lot harder. And then as it keeps going, you go from 14 million or whatever, 14 million now, I think, in circulation. The next million are going to be a lot more difficult to come by. So that's what actually increases its value as it goes, because it's going to take more computing power. And then as it becomes more pervasive in transactions, and that's one of the problems too, is that, for all the hodlers out there, holding on to your Bitcoin and just sitting there and holding on to it is not necessarily productive to its acceptance as a legitimate means of transacting. Because if no one's transacting with it, it's like, I had a friend, this guy I went to high school with, he's like, we had this organ, it's like made of, I don't know, some like old, like ancient organ that had like the big horn on it or whatever. And he's like, this thing it's worth $350,000. I was like, really? Well, why don't y'all sell it? He's like, well, we can't find anybody who wants to buy it. I'm like, oh, all right, well, maybe it's not worth as much. Maybe it's not worth as much as you think it is. So, but anyway, that's my initial thoughts on it. And it's funny. So I didn't think about this episode when I wore it, but I just wanted to wear a different shirt, and I actually wore my backwards "Taxation is Theft" shirt. And so shout out to Dan Behrman, who's still, as far as I know, still running for president as an independent. I still have one of his little magnets in my it's on one of my refrigerators in the garage. I have a refrigerator in the garage.
Hey, Dan makes it onto the ballot in Indiana. I'll vote for his ass.
Yeah, hell yeah. But anyway, his slogan on that thing is roses are red, violets are blue, taxation is theft, inflation is too. And that's the thing that really makes Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general attractive, is that as first of all, it's a great way to avoid paying taxes. If you're not using, and I'm going to get into Coinbase and some of these other things that are these custodial accounts that there's an article that I have that I'll just read a couple little excerpts from it. But making it to where you can avoid that, but then also every time the currency is inflated, Bitcoin becomes more valuable. Now, you might not see that in the exchange rate, right? It doesn't always work out that way, but it's becoming more intrinsically valuable. And it's just a matter of time before it's really hard. It's kind of like the gold price has always been so weird to monitor, because how do you even measure? Because you don't know how much gold there is in the world. There's some estimations, but then we don't know. Like there's a lot of monkey business going on with the gold price relative to the dollar, because it's tagged to the dollar. Right. Now, gold to like silver, or gold to butter, wheat, things that like tangible assets. Those things have not. I remember Ron Paul talking about, there was 2 silver coins can buy you a suit 200 years ago, and 2 silver coins can buy you a suit today.
Right.
Because, and that just shows you, yeah, right. It might even be able to buy you 2 suits. Who knows? Because actually, like, as technology gets better and we get more efficient at making things, that metal, retains kind of a steady value, but the things that we can create with better efficiency, actually. So prices, if you think about it, this is what's crazy about inflation, is that people don't even realize, because they've been so indoctrinated by what inflation does to us. Prices should always go down.
Yeah.
Because we're always getting more efficient. We're always getting more creative and better at making things more efficiently and better quality and less expensive. So when you look at, what's interesting is something like LASIK, that was like thousands of dollars, is now a few $100s.
Right.
And
real capital.
A 4K 75-inch TV is like $700. Right. And a 42-inch plasma TV 10 years ago was $4,000, or $6,000 or whatever. So when you think about those sorts of things, and then you look at bread and eggs, and it's like $3 for a dozen eggs, and I remember when it used to be like 64 cents for a dozen eggs. Yep. Like, what the fuck? Did chickens get that much more expensive? How have they gone up in value? And a TV has gotten better. Like, it's the same fucking chicken, same eggs. Actually, the eggs are worse, because they're like, if you like have chickens and you get like fresh eggs from a chicken, the yolk is like orange almost. Yeah. And these chickens that you get in the store, the yolk is damn near white.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck they're feeding these chickens, but it's not the same. Anyway, that I digress.
Great.
I'm going on.
Oh, good. So what do you think about all this, Nicco?
I personally believe that Bitcoin is a segue for us to break away from decentralized government that's been in place for so long. And it's kind of unfortunate that just based off of what Chad said, that everything's going up, and it makes no sense. We have an American dollar that's backed by nothing. I forgot which president, but he took us off the gold, and it's like, so nobody was going to question that. So what are we going to back our money off of? And on top of that, these guys have been dictating on our money. They dictate our lives based off our money. I'm fairly sure when it comes to Bitcoin, I don't think that would be necessarily a thing, because it's a peer-to-peer network. You can't screw me out of my money because I know who you are, opposed to it being the government saying, oh, sorry, your check didn't come in. Where do I go? Where do I go to discuss that? And then I have to go wait with the business and all that. And that's all that hoo-ha. But I personally believe Bitcoin and digital currency is a way for people to expand and to, like I said, break away from the government. And it would be a lot easier for me to try and send Chad like 2 Bitcoin for a mic, and opposed to me going through PayPal and all these other sources that, take charges and fees and all that other stuff, when I can go just directly to him. Mm-hmm. So this is something that's, and with the article, it's funny because they demonize it. They try and make it Bitcoin something that's not necessarily good for us because of what it does and what it allows and what the freedoms it allows. I don't think that, no, I know people don't do their research as much as they should.
Well, just to put it in perspective, everybody remembers Amber Geiger and Botham Jean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she walked into his apartment drunk, shot him dead. You know how much of a prison sentence she got?
What, like 3 years or something?
10. It was 10 years, but yeah, it's probably commutable down to like 3 years or something. I mean, I don't know what she's going to end up actually serving, but I doubt it's going to be the full 10. Ross Ulbricht started a website called Silk Road that was this anonymous place. It was basically like Craigslist online, all Bitcoin.
Oh yeah,
All Bitcoin,
he went down.
and they put him. Listen to this. Is it double or triple? Is it two? It's yeah, 2 life sentences plus 40 years.
Yeah, that's
for making a website. And the reason, the rationale that they gave, same thing like with this article. The rationale that they gave was that there were people who were hiring hitmen with this. People were buying drugs. Ooh, bad. That's you can't. Yeah. Did they buy beer too? God, we should definitely.
My question with all of that, when they started doing all that shit, was like, you can't buy a hitman with dollars.
I was gonna say that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, then we should shut the fucking Fed down and put all those motherfuckers in jail because you can buy all the same shit with their stuff.
Yeah, Jeff Berwick went into this like extensively, I think last year. He was talking about, it was like the most criminal thing like that is bought in the world is the US dollar.
US dollar, yeah.
Take out the criminals that are running governments, holding a badge or running a bank. Take those people out. The criminals out there shooting people. Wait a minute, this is the same people. You know what I mean? The low-key criminals on the streets, just them, they more often than not paid in dollars.
In cash, in Federal Reserve notes. That's right. That's right.
And don't think, and they want to monopolize digital currency for sure. They're going to let Bitcoin grow enough. And this is just one of many ways that they're going to try to shut Bitcoin down. And the reason is because it takes a monopoly of money out of their hands. And if they cannot control the flow of capital from one person to another, if I want to buy something from Nicco and Nicco wants to sell me something, I can buy it, like he said, with Bitcoin. Number one, just be between us. We don't have to involve nobody else.
Right.
It's funny that you said that. I think I don't know if I'm getting my dates up, but recently, JP Morgan went all in. Like 2-3 years ago, they were like, no, it's not good. Warren Buffett was like, it's rat poison times 2.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you that all the big names, they're trying to skew people away from it. They're always demonizing it, such as like the last topic we had last week is voodoo. They always demonize something so that you feel obligated not to mess with it.
to not even consider it and not even look into it for yourself.
And they've been doing this shit for years. This is not this. It's so funny in history when you look at the same shit. It's always the kids are gonna get killed, and then they're gonna do all that. You look at what they accuse people of with witchcraft. It's the same shit. They just roll it out on the new demon.
So I'm watching the Waco that Paramount series that's on Netflix now. I'm through the first 5 episodes, and I'm just kind of remembering. I mean, it's not like you can spoil this shit. It's like a thing that happened 30 years ago or whatever, or 25 years ago.
I was in high school.
I was like ending high school into college, maybe freshman.
I was either a junior or senior. So
yeah, so it's interesting because when you think about the people who were the players in this, Janet Reno and the Clintons, and I'll get back to them in just a second. So like the things that we are supposed to be afraid of from the Branch Davidians is number one, they have guns and like they're like armed up and all this stuff. And so like they said something about how they were preparing for a doomsday assault. Like they're all like holed up in a compound out in the middle of nowhere. Like what the fuck are they going to assault? Like
No major fucking like.
What they were worried about was exactly what happened to him. You know, that's what they were preparing for, was exactly what happened to him. Okay, so there's that part of it. The other thing that they were accused of was that you had Koresh, you know, married to multiple women. Some of them were underage and stuff like that. And so, like, you know, like, yeah, okay, like, you know, a 30-something-year-old, you know, being married to a 14-year-old or whatever, you know, it's like, yeah, you're that's, I can't get down with that, you know, like there's some, and there's definitely, like, I'm pretty sure there was some like psychological manipulation and all those sorts of things, some gaslighting and those, you know, like it's that there's definitely some of that. But if we really think about Janet Reno and the Clintons and all of their people and the shit that we have heard about what they do to children,
Epstein,
and all the body bags in their trail, and the wars that they contributed to, Hillary Clinton especially,
right?
And then you consider the fact that, like, what did they do? What first they go in and they say that they were just going to peacefully serve a warrant. They had like fucking 8 trucks full of ATF people in body armor and with like machine guns and rifles and pistols. Okay?
We're here for peace.
Right. And so, like, they show up. If a bunch of people get out at your house and show up like that and charge your house and like get, you know, with guns drawn and pointed at you, and then your response is to shoot a few of them after they shoot through your door and kill a few of your people,
murderers,
then you're the murderers,
right?
Like, how? What?
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's all so it's just interesting that all of these things are, to me, it's like a grand example of the government telling on itself.
Well,
what they're doing, everything that they tell you to be afraid of, is their projection of the shit that they always do and that they don't want competition in.
What Waco taught us is that if you are afraid of children being hurt by some dude, they know how to solve it. And apparently they
murder
know
the children
solve it by burning them all alive.
Right.
No more problem.
Yeah, well, it's just like their solution to kids being born in poverty is like, we should kill them before they're born. And so it's like, you know, not to get into all that stuff, but like, it's your decision for how you want to handle yourself and everything is one thing, but for there to be like a push and like a funding and then a prevention of people, like look, if you want to tell somebody, hey, look, over here, if you want to come over here before you go do that, we can, like, you know, do an ultrasound and we can like talk to you and, like, you know, maybe talk to you about adoption. We have a waiting list of people who want to adopt babies. Maybe you don't have to kill it. You know, like, there's a way to make this something that's peaceful and compassionate, and instead they make it to where it's like, well, you know, that baby might be poor, so we ought to just like knock it off. This is the same thing with, like, these kids are in danger. They might be indoctrinated with some crazy, you know, wacko mentality about the Bible and stuff. And it's like, and look, whatever you think about like the Branch Davidians and their belief system is one thing. I don't think that the answer is to blow them all up.
Right. Catching them all on fire, bad idea.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So now let me, if I may, let me go into this little article. This is from Cointelegraph. It says, "Never mind Coinbase, Big Brother is already watching your coins." So this is, and again, back to custodial versus non-custodial. So the difference between a custodial account or a custodial wallet, a non-custodial wallet is where you have your private key and no one else does. A custodial wallet is where the like Coinbase, they keep your key, and your stuff is there, and then you have to like ask them permission to get it. Essentially, like they're really
I
cool.
have to ask for my money.
They're really cool with giving you permission to have your money now. Because that's how you get people in. It's just like like there was a guy one time he was popping Nicorette gum, and he's like, "You want one? The first one's free." I was like, "Yeah, okay, no thanks, bro." But so that's how it usually is. It's like get you sucked in. Have you enjoy the platform and all that kind of stuff because it's easy and the fees are low and whatever, all that kind of shit. Well, so what this thing says is, it says, again, back to this, like they're afraid, like the Ross Ulbricht, they're afraid of what people might be doing with their Bitcoin. They're afraid what people might be doing with their private accounts. But if you don't have anything to hide, then you shouldn't worry about hiding anything.
Right.
You should just piss in the wide open. Except we'll arrest you if you piss in the wide open. We might even beat the fuck out of you.
I'd tell you all about it, man. If he had just cooperated.
If you just cooperate, everything goes great. Yeah. So it says in traditional institutions, a transaction needs to meet certain criteria in most cases to be deemed suspicious. That's not really true for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, though. As far as the government is concerned, the threshold of suspicious is met as soon as cryptocurrency is involved. And it says, custodial entities are legally required to file SARs, which I'm gonna have to look up. I don't know what that abbreviation means. SAR.
He ain't done it.
Oh, suspicious activity report. Okay, a suspicious activity report. They have to file this is custodial entity like Coinbase. They have to file a suspicious activity report for any crypto related transaction above $5,000, regardless of the user's other activity. And many of them file for lower amounts. So like you could just do like a $250 transaction to somebody, and they just
might be getting.
I don't know, man. This guy, I don't know if this guy really should be sending $250 to Marcus. Let's flag it. So anyway, then the other part,
no good.
They are legally barred from revealing this reporting data to users or any member of the public. So they have to they can report whoever they want. They have to report you if it's 5,000 or above, and they are barred from letting you know that they did it.
Yeah.
So for all you know, you're already on the list of people to watch. So Felicia's probably listening, Marcus. That's all I'm saying. Nicco, why you got your camera off, man?
I'm sorry. I was in the middle of cooking, and I didn't
walk.
I didn't want to walk all through the house, since
Yeah. All right, I got you.
But going back to that point of them borrowing you and all that, isn't it like absolutely reckless? The fact that they have so much power over something that's not even supposed to have power in the first place.
Yeah.
Like it's something that is a mutual thing. So granted, most transactions, every transaction should be mutual, but it's the fact that if I send more money than usual or it's something suspicious, they can send a report and not tell me they're sending a report. And so therefore this is becoming a lot more messier than what it's supposed to be. So what would be your guys' thoughts on the next Coinbase, if there is a next Coinbase, if you see where I'm coming? Like, what would be the app, or where would be the go-to? Would it be us, the ones creating it, or would it be something entirely different?
They already exist, and me myself, they would have to do an awful lot of work to find the Bitcoin that I have. They're going to have to work hard. Can they? Certainly, they can find it. I have Bitcoin. They can find it, but it's going to be hard. And what you can do as well is there's not just Bitcoin. I've heard a lot. I don't own Monero, but I've heard a lot about Monero, and it's a privacy coin, and they can't track that shit hardly at all. And so you can but what you can do really easily once you get Bitcoin, and it's probably in the best place to give you advice on how to do all that. But you can get Bitcoin and then take Bitcoin and easily make it into Ethereum, and then easily make it into to Monero, and then easily make it into something like that. And all they'll be able to track is that you've got Bitcoin, you placed Bitcoin into another place, because they won't know where you sent it. They'll just know that you sent it someplace. Mm-hmm. I really miss myself for not only for the platform itself, but I miss it for the ease of transaction that I had with Steemit. Steemit has gone to shit lately, and what it was a blockchain-based social media platform, similar, though more of just a blog format, to Facebook or to Twitter, or one of those. And they paid you in a cryptocurrency called Steem for making content. You can make videos.
Steemit was kind of like if Facebook and Twitter had a crypto baby.
Right.
Because what Facebook has in like long form, like article writing capability and like attaching pictures to it and all this sort of stuff, more so than Twitter is very limited to like, you typically your timeline has, when you look at it on your phone, has like 3 or 4 different tweets at a time on the screen. Whereas Steemit, you might have one. You might be able to see the beginning of the next one, even if you're looking at it on your computer. So it's like long form articles, like a blog. So you had like your own blog, like your profile was a blog, and then people could comment below it. But then what they also did was they could re-steam it, which is like retweeting it or something like that, or sharing it on Facebook. But they could also so that the re-steaming gave you some a fraction of the currency. Steam was the currency, and then like upvotes gave you currency too. So people could you could actually make money by having, if you had enough people upvote your post.
Right.
And there was a stretch. Now I know it was like there was Adam had been given a chunk that he was able to then kind of divvy out to people, to articles that he found were worth promoting. And there was a stretch there where I was making like 50, 75, $80 for an article.
For about 3, I'd say but it's somewhere between 2 and 3 months, I was averaging, now I wrote a lot, but I was averaging around $300 to $500 once I converted it into dollars from Steemit per week.
Mm-hmm. That's solid money.
And as you built up, like so imagine a 50,000 follower Twitter account has a certain amount of ability to like expose you to more people who can see your work, and B, they have more steam power. So if they upvoted your thing, their upvote was worth like $5, whereas somebody else's might be worth a nickel or a penny.
What was fantastic, like how I pulled this shit off is Adam, because he had all this and he was helping a motherfucker out, and he and I are
right. Yep.
Adam, when he shared it, oh hell no, $50 my ass. I got like $150 chunk.
Right. Exactly.
And he shared it. One of his buddies shares it, and I get even more fucking money.
Right.
So yeah, he made a shit ton. But
yeah, there was that, but then the other aspect of it that was negative was if you had enough powerful people who could do it, and this is what started to happen. Somebody got pissed off. They got jealous. And so what they did was they would just swarm. And so how you can you can like or retweet, but you can't dislike a post.
Mm-hmm.
You can just comment. Well, on Steemit, you can downvote. And if you get So what they were doing was every time one of us or Adam or anything like that would post something, they would swarm to it and downvote the shit out of it, and it would make it worthless.
Yeah, where you couldn't even see it.
And you wouldn't be able to see it either.
Is the Bitcoin community that toxic? Because I see Wendy O talking about it all the time with Hotep, and she said, I mean, granted, it's a different dynamic because she's a girl, but is the community just that toxic and full of whiny ass men?
The libertarian, the underground, so to speak. Yeah, it can be that way, unfortunately. It's crazy because, like, if you think about it, like, this is supposed to be people who are like nonviolent and non-coercive and non-fraudulent, and I've met some awesome people. I've met people like Marcus and Michael and Adam and Elijah and all these folks in that community. There's a huge group of people who I love, who like are really, really cool, like genuine people. And then there's just like this handful of like real assholes who really try to fuck people's lives up for out of jealousy or out of like clout chasing, or I'm not sure what it is exactly.
Well, I think a lot of it is COINTELPRO. Are you?
Yeah, there's some of that too. Yeah.
Are you familiar with COINTELPRO?
I've heard of it, but I've never gone in depth.
It was a government organization that arose in when the Black Panthers were coming.
Yeah, I was gonna say they took the Black Panthers down essentially.
Yeah.
Created the Black Panthers and did things like there'd be a bunch of Black Panthers hanging out, and maybe they're pissed off, and maybe they have these radical ideas or whatever, but they would insert somebody in there, and one, they would tell on them, but they would also get them to do shit. Like if they're out in the protesting something they got fucked over somehow, whatever, they'd have their guy going, how about we and he just happened to have some bricks.
Same thing as Antifa. What Antifa's doing now for a lot of this stuff with the BLM protests, and everything.
Right. So they would infiltrate and then just be dickholes, be complete dickholes, and get other people that didn't have any clue to be dickholes and get them to attack. The Libertarian Party itself and the freedom movement, we have a boat ton of these people. We either have those people that are infiltrators that are absolutely trying to take our movement down, or there are dumbasses that follow those people trying to take our movement down. Yeah. And Bitcoin gets thrown into that a lot. And the reason is exactly what this article has led us to, is they see they see, these people could take us down. And to a degree, I don't personally blame the people in government for fearing people like me. I don't blame them. I'd be scared too. I want to eliminate the government. I want it gone. And if you work as a general for the government, I'm not your friend. So I get it.
Right.
But the problem is, we in Bitcoin enables people to decrease that power that government has, or the power that any person, even corporations and those sorts of things, have, by putting the power of money in your hands. And it's peaceful. This is a way to get around government, to have a revolution without bloodshed. And that is scary as shit to them, because they know that people are afraid of war and bombs and tanks rolling through the streets.
Which is why they have moved from that as their typical modus operandi now to more, emasculating men and softening people up, making people lazy, making people comfortable, making things convenient and fun, making, shit like Facebook, like, hey, what we'll do is we'll make this app where everybody seems to be enjoying it, and they'll just share family pictures and everything. And what we'll do is we'll do like 10 years, what is it? The 10-year challenge, where they're just using it to like gather facial recognition data so they can tell, like, so they can do like extrapolations of, or interpolations from like, all right, if this is Nicco at 18, this is Nicco at 28. Well, we can fill in the gaps, and then we can use that data to figure out what Nicco at 58 is going to look like, so that if he ever tries to fucking leave or do something we don't like, we'll be able to find his ass with all our cameras that we have everywhere. Shit like that. And it's and one of the other things about COINTELPRO that was really, really effective was what they would also do is they would have these bad actors. Gaslighting is not the right term. It's just like manipulating these people. What they would do is they take somebody. So let's say you're like, right-hand man of Hotep Jesus, and I'm COINTELPRO, and I'd just be like, look, man, I dig it. I love Hotep Jesus. He's a good guy and everything, but you could be so much more than him. You could definitely be better than him. You just and so what they would do is they'd start that kind of like the second or third or fourth in command or something like that. They'd start telling them that, like, he's not doing this right. They'd be trying to go after. They'd try to undermine leadership by getting people to like kind of pit themselves essentially against leadership. And so that's where they would say, like, instead of them being like, hey, let's do this, they'd be like, hey man, you know what would really win people over for you is if you went and did this and showed. And so all it was doing was it would just start to fracture movements. And so it's, I can't remember all the different things. Oh, and then one of the other things that they would do is they do this bad jacketing. Well, I guess that's sort of like the what the infiltrators would do. They'd start to like have these like corruption stories around someone so that they could undermine their message by saying, well, yeah, but kind of like with the Branch Davidians, it's like, well, yeah, but do you want a bunch of people who are collecting guns and like they're planning for some doomsday thing because they think that the apocalypse is coming and all this stuff, and they're trying to prepare for a doomsday assault, and also they're like raping children and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, yeah, I guess we should burn them alive. You know what I mean? Like, it's because I remember. And the other thing, this is the other thing that they did. They painted them as suicidal, and there's like tons of evidence that they were anything but suicidal.
Yeah.
And what they wanted to do was they wanted to paint this picture of like, because I remember when it happened, I thought, and I heard it, but I believed it, that Koresh blew that shit up. That he's the one who because that was some of the early reports. Same as like how some of the early reports around 9/11 were that like they were like, we heard reports that there's vans down on the corner of this street and this street and and all this stuff. And then that was like the shit that was going on live. And then by like the next day, no one had ever said that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Right. So to bring this back to Bitcoin, they've been trying to demonize Bitcoin for a long time, and doing the kind of things like this article is talking about because they see it as a threat. But what they're also doing, what you got to really kind of pay attention to is while they're telling you that Bitcoin's awful, they're buying the shit out of that stuff. They get you to sell it. We'll take some of that for us. Thank you because then once they get it, once they're in control of it, if they have a controlling amount, kind of goes back to the Steam It thing. When you have enough to where you can shut other motherfuckers down, then that's what you do.
A decentralized currency becomes centralized at that point because what the blockchain relies on is that peer-to-peer validation of transactions. And that peer-to-peer validation of who has what, who owns what assets. And when you become the majority owner of that validation, you can just be like, guess what? It's all mine.
Yeah.
So how many Bitcoin are in circulation right now? Like 12?
It's like 14.
14? So
14 million.
what percentage of the currency would the government need for them to basically run our lives, like run crypto?
Well, that's the key. That's the key, is that the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
The answer to that question really is they can't. Because if anybody gets a whiff, if I got a whiff that the government was going to totally just grab onto Bitcoin and take it, I'd transfer all my shit right into Monero. Just take the loss, throw it into Monero, or I throw it in. I already have, an Ethereum account. I throw it into an Ethereum account, throw it into Dash, throw it in. Maybe I'll take a loss, but I'll throw it into another cryptocurrency, and they're fucked. There's nothing they can do.
All right.
I don't have the exact number right now, but it's roughly 17 million.
There you go.
Of 21 million. But see, again, remember that the halving, what it does is it continues to make it to where yesterday you could mine for this, it took this many or this much mining power, because I don't know how familiar you are with
it runs off electricity, basically.
Yeah,
like,
well,
you got it running.
Right. Well, what runs off electricity is the computers that it takes to calculate. Because what you're doing is you're telling your computer to make guesses at a riddle that is mathematical.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a series of the way that each Bitcoin is tied to a mathematical problem that becomes increasingly difficult to solve. So let's say yesterday it had 30 parameters. Well, tomorrow it will have 38 or whatever it is that will actually make it twice as difficult to solve. So it takes that many more. Essentially what these computers are doing is they're just guessing, because it's kind of like if I said, if I knew, okay, 1 is cow, 2 is chicken, 3 is goat, and 4 is armadillo. What is 5? And only I know what 5 is. I'm not going to tell y'all what 5 is. Okay, so go ahead. What's 5? Because those things don't make any sense together, right?
Right.
It's not like it's not even like really a mathematical formula. It's almost like something that you're guessing, because it's this pattern that is super, super difficult to solve. And so instead what the computers do is they just throw guesses. And so what they're doing is they are using sort of a statistical model or an algorithm to give them the best, 1,000 guesses first. But to compute that and to figure out and rank order those and then start submitting them, because what it's doing is everybody's submitting, and whoever gets it right gets a Bitcoin. So what's happening as it gets increasingly difficult to mine is, yesterday it took 7 hours with 4 I don't know, whatever the fastest processor in the world is, 4 of those processors. It took that 7 hours to calculate this yesterday. Today it takes 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have even less computing power than that, it might take you 6 days. And by that point, some other guy's already, his computers already found it. Right,
yeah.
Right. So unless you get really, really lucky and you're just like, you just say, tarantula. And I'm like, God damn, you guessed it. It was tarantula,
Right.
So that's how the mining system works. And then it's just, each block is just is like the entire ledger. On every block you have the entire ledger, and that's why it works, because everyone has the knowledge of what addresses. Now I don't know that Nicco is the holder of that long address for that wallet.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that that wallet is what owns that 17 acres of land, or whatever the case may be. To get into Bitcoin, you don't have to mine. I've never mined a single.
No, right. No, I'm just saying why it increases in value, and why 17 million went relative to 21 million sounds like, holy fuck, we're almost there.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it's still
asymptotic. It's asymptotic. It's going to keep getting, the curve is going to taper off the closer it gets to, and it's never going to reach. All 21 million Bitcoin will never be mined.
Yeah.
Because it just keeps getting more difficult to where it's I was going to make a sexual reference there, but I stopped short. But you know what I'm talking about. When it feels like it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah!
Kind of like one of those,
Oh.
So yeah, this is again.
Almost there. Dang it.
Yeah, but this whole thing with the attack on Bitcoin is again just government insecure as shit because they know this is again another example of this is me finding the bright side. To me, they're throwing all this shit like coronavirus, like blowing up fucking the George Floyd stuff.
Right.
Because Trump might as well be on his Twitter saluting Hitler at this point because this dude's so dumb about all this shit. So there's that, and then you've got like North Korea, blowing shit up, all this craziness. China's going nuts, trying to. What that shows is that they know that their power is losing, that they are about to lose grip on the world. And because of that, they're tightening. And they see what's coming. And they see it in the thing, you can track what they think is going to do it. Because it's the people that they're coming down hardest on. It's, they see it's why they needed, and not trying to jump into race or any of that craziness, but it's why in the 1960s and 1970s, they worked their ass off to tear apart the Black family and to tear apart Black individualism and to try to segregate that population because they saw it. Think about the movies, the ideas that you see from the Black community talking about Martin Luther King Jr., talking about Malcolm X, talking about lesser names, just shooting individual rights, your life being number one, and being shitty with the government all over the place. That was the Black community, and they knew it, and they had to stomp it down. Well, the same thing is going on with Bitcoin. The same thing is going on with the freedom movement. That those things are gaining enough power that the government sees them as a threat, and so they're taking them out.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I was watching Hotep Jesus was on with Thaddeus Russell, and they were talking about and I didn't even this never even really dawned on me, but they were talking about the in Civil War Reconstruction, that one of the major things that and it was funny because it's like, this is what the North, it's like, wow, we're anti-slavery. It's like, okay, all right. So what they did was they forced, they set up there's like 2,000 schools, and basically what the schools were designed to do was, school's good, you learn some fundamentals, but one of the fundamentals that everybody just sleeps on is how they tried to make Black people white.
Yeah. Ooh.
And it's and it was funny. Hotep Jesus was talking about how he had done one of his videos. This is back when he was Ali Shakur, and he was on that wave. But he said that he was at a party, a Christmas party or something like that, and his uncle apparently had been watching his stuff, and he came up to him and he said, he whispered, he leaned in and whispered in his ear. He said, "Integration was infiltration," and then he just kind of backed away and was like. So when you think about some of that stuff, it's like when assimilation, instead of maintaining your cultural integrity and being allowed to wear, it's funny, so all these Democrats wear kente cloth and go and kneel and all this stuff last week, and they look like complete clowns. Yeah. But there's people who just ate that shit up. But the thing that was crazy about that is it was really, really like what we were talking about last week with voodoo, there's certain shit that you just are not allowed to do. You can't be Black, not that Black. And they had a thing, I don't know if y'all saw that, but Soledad O'Brien was talking about how CNN, she wanted to have Roland Martin on. And I don't politically agree all the time with, or most of the time with Roland Martin, but, he's not what I would call an establishment type. He maybe leans that way a little bit on some things, and maybe he's not quite there. But apparently he was a little bit too Afrocentric for them. So CNN told Soledad O'Brien that she couldn't have him on because he wasn't the right kind of black person.
What is the right kind of black person?
Well, I'm actually kind of amazed that they've let Van Jones keep talking, because he started to say some stuff I was like, oh damn, what the hell?
I know.
Like,
You know that your life is taking a weird turn when Van Jones says some shit and you go, well, that's some pretty good stuff. You're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But no, it's and I look, I don't think there's anything wrong with white people, with me being with being white. I like who I am and all that stuff. But like, I don't think Nicco should have to be white or act a certain way or like adopt religions that that his family and his heritage doesn't believe in, or adopt customs that are not part of, it's like this weird, they try to force like a homogeneity on a group of people, and it was very very destructive to we're talking about this whole idea with like so he's been on fire lately, but like Scott Adams was on with Hotep Jesus last week, and they were talking about the Black Lives Matter slogan. Scott Adams was saying it's a terrible slogan because that's setting the bar pretty low. All you want to do is matter. And then, while I agree, like on a, like just a basic level, what Hotep Jesus came back with was, yeah, but there's a lot of people who like, they need to hear that. They need to like, they don't even know that they believe that themselves. And that's kind of what's been done to people, as it's a like psychological manipulation, and like making people feel like they need approval outside of themselves is a great way to control people.
For sure.
It's a great way to strip them of who they are. Yeah. Because if you can feel like I have to tell you that I matter, if you can get people to the point where they have to say Black Lives Matter, that should tell you a whole lot about like what you've done to people.
Right.
It's regardless of what that whole organization has been co-opted by and everything else. Just the idea that people are that's instead of it being something like, heck no, we won't go, or LBJ, all the shit that they screamed at him about, going to war and everything, like that kind of stuff. This is like, hey, stop killing us. Right. It's like, stop killing us because we are people. And that tells you a lot about like how like what's really going on, and B, even to the extent that it may be like overblown by the media to where it's like the focus is always on that stuff, and the focus is taken away from like normal everyday people who could just get along. Yeah. We don't, that shit doesn't sell advertising. Hey, today Nicco, Chad, and Marcus had a podcast together, and it's two white dudes and a black guy, and they really, they're cool with each other. Who gives a shit? What, did anybody kill anybody, or like did anybody say anything like racially insensitive? Is there anything that we can do to like make people mad at each other? Oh no, okay, well then fuck that. And it goes back to what I was saying last week about getting us focusing on fighting each other. It's a great way. Divide and conquer is the oldest trick in the book. Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, you're absolutely right. It's one of the reasons that I personally like Malcolm X a lot. If Malcolm X was out in front of the Black Lives Matter people right now, government have a problem. They'd be like, fuck. Because he said things like, if you're not ready to die for it, put the word freedom out of your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't playing around with I matter. He's playing around with we're ready to die. and you better recognize, or we're gonna have problem. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of heart that any movement, no matter what it is, and the Bitcoin movement has a bit of this too. But any movement needs to have that fire in the belly. Get ready. I remember.
That's why they took out Ross Ulbricht though too, is because when you have someone, and that's why it's no mistake that Malcolm X suffered a similar fate. You have when you have someone like that who is charismatic, or in Ulbricht's case, he was kind of under the radar, but like the site Silk Road was a place where it was a magnet for people who just wanted to be able to do things and buy things without telling the whole government where the fuck all this. And also, I think the biggest thing was they used all those other fear tactics to tell people why he had to go to jail for 2 lives plus 40. But the real reason was because nobody was paying taxes on all those transactions. They weren't getting their cut.
Nope.
And that's the worst thing that, it's like, what's the best way to a man's heart? Through his stomach. What's the best way to government's heart? Is through your wallet.
Right, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's just it. Again, it is always about power with them, and they need it all. They have to suck it up and grab it. That's what they do. And money buys power a lot. To wind this down a little bit, guys, I'm going to go with the quote for this week, and then maybe we can discuss it a bit and then dive down until we're about ready. We're going to keep this one relatively short.
Yeah.
But the quote this week is by Lysander Spooner. And this is one of my favorites overall. I don't think I've used it yet, but it is definitely one of my favorites. And I think it's very true, and also shows why government is so fearful of the power of money being pulled from them, which is what cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in particular, is aimed at doing. So Spooner said, and to be clear, this is from the 1860s. So, I mean, this is, he was a little ahead of his time.
Yeah, you get Spooner and Bastiat, and it's like, damn, these motherfuckers were spitting in like the 1800s.
Oh yeah. So what he said was, so these villains who call themselves governments well understand that their power rests primarily upon money. With money, they can hire soldiers, and with soldiers, extort money. And when their authority is denied, the first thing they use, the first use they always make of money is to hire soldiers to kill or subdue all who refuse them more money. That's it. It is all about money translates, and money is just the medium of exchange. That's all it is. When we're talking about Bitcoin, Bitcoin can be a medium of exchange. It's money. But so's corn. If I decide that I want to keep corn around and use it for money, it can be a medium of exchange. Anything can be a medium of exchange. There are things that are better suited for it because they have intrinsic value that lasts. But governments understand that their power rests on their ability to pay soldiers or police officers, and these days there's no difference, to attack you if you don't tell you what to do, if you don't do what they tell you to do.
Yeah.
So this has been so you guys have any comments about that?
Yeah, I want to hear Nicco talk about it, because what we were talking about before we came on was whether or not you were going to be driving down and with all the shit that's going on and everything. That kind of hit.
It's interesting because of the state that we're in. This is like madness. Like, I need everybody to smoke some weed. If you don't smoke some weed, go sit your ass down and drink some chamomile tea, because the fact is that I'm a black boy from Chicago that would love to go and drive down to Louisiana, but with the state it's very difficult for me to do that, because I don't know if I have a big old target on my head or not. just driving and minding my business, even if I do comply. Like it's kind of threatening, and it's the fact that and it's so baffling, it's irritating that nobody goes back and looks up at their history. Every time I bring up a point, it's always about history. People don't know that the police force started off as slave catchers, or back in the South, it was a democratic thing that was started by the KKK. So just imagine what the armies that are in place.
For sure.
Granted, we think and we're taught, yeah, we're here to fight for our country, this, that, and the third. Then you go look up at the Carfax and we find out that
Look at the Carfax. That's great.
We're about to get annihilate women and kids for gas for mom just to make it to the grocery store back at home.
Mm-hmm.
Or every time we pay to go see a movie, we're helping fund. We might as well be the one that's dropping that bomb, pressing that red button and dropping the bomb on people. It's really, it's scary, the level of ignorance that just floats around the common collective, and people are okay with it. So for example, like I was telling my aunt about how food just affects you more than physically, it's spiritually. And I was telling her about like how there's negative connotations that's with that food when you ingest it. And she started covering her ears and saying, la, 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 la. And I'm like, my bad. But then I had a shower thought, and I'm like, no, you shouldn't have been sorry. You shouldn't be sorry for informing people of their ignorance. And if they choose to fight, then, be my guest. Fight against me all you want. But I don't want to be the one to say, I told you so. Because it doesn't fill me with any kind of warmth to say, I told you so. For a matter that's no bueno.
No, right. Well, and that's the thing when all this shit is going on, and it's there are these people who for some reason want to like bring up all kinds of like statistics and all this. Like, dude, like people are in pain right now, and maybe if you offered some compassion instead of like yelling at them and stuff, it would be a lot more effective. But to your point, yeah, like the this idea of it's more convenient to stick your fingers in your ears and go la 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 to go about your day, and we're so that's what I was saying, like the brainstorm, I guess, that they came up with. And Murray Rothbard talks about this in The Anatomy of the State, where he says, it was it's like a time-honored tradition of raping and looting and pillaging when you conquered a village. You just like burned it to the ground and like killed everybody, raped the women and children, and you took what you could, then you moved on and you went and found another village. Well, they paused, the leaders or the conquerors paused in that time-honored tradition and thought, I think the time of plunder would be much more peaceful and much longer if we just settled among these people and extracted a tribute from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we have here is we have what is instead of a constant actual like boot on our necks, or well, pardon the poor choice of phrase there, but for some people sometimes it happens that way, but by and large what we are dealing with is a very soft form of oppression. It's this oppression through or manipulation, or we're having the wool pulled over our eyes by entertainment, by easy food, fast food, fast living, all this entertainment that keeps you laughing and dumbed down and like laughing at this. That's why like Idiocracy is like a super prophetic movie. I don't
That's
doubt for
what we're
one
living.
second.
That's what we're living.
I don't doubt for one second that we're not far away from Ow My Balls being an actual show on TikTok or something that people are watching nonstop. And that's what they do. That's like the design. The design is keep these people dumbed down. If they are going to fight anything at all, have them fight each other. But mostly, let's keep it peaceful. Let's keep it calm. If we have to, every now and then, we'll whack them into submission, like with the coronavirus stuff or this shit that's going on now. I think there was like this. I feel like maybe we were reaching some precipice of like enlightenment, and so they were like, "Nah, fuck y'all, let's dumb everybody down again." And so we'll get football back, soon enough, because they got to keep the bread and circuses going. And so that's all it is. It's a cycle of bread and circuses, and then clashing with and putting down a rebellion every so often. But really, I think that they would much rather not have to deal with the rebellions.
Yeah,
they'd much rather just keep us dumbed down. And
for sure. And I actually think I have the other piece to how they made that happen. There was a study, and if you've heard this before, this is a common thing. Lots of people know about it. If you've heard about it, I'll just say it for the audience, just in case they haven't. But on top of that, what they've done is they did a study with chimpanzees several years ago. I wish I could find the study, but I've seen it, I've read it, been years ago. Anyway, with these chimpanzees, what they did was they gave them in their bowl, they had a big cage and they had a ladder on the cage, and they put a bowl of food that like slid out both on the bottom and the top. Okay, they made it a little bit more difficult to get to the top one, right? But the food that was down at the bottom is just shit. Barely tastes like crap, and it kept you going, but it wasn't very good. But the stuff at the top, now what they put up there was just what you wanted. It not only gave you a bunch of energy, gave you everything. You were tasted great, was wonderful. So what they did was they had 10, and I'm probably messing up the numbers, but they had like 10 chimpanzees that they put in this cage, and they'll just let them run amok for a while, just chill out. So there, of course, after a while, this monkey said, "Fuck that bowl on the top, on the bottom. I'm hitting that big one. I'm hungry. I need some of this shit." So he went up and he got the good stuff. Well, after a time, they had trained them, hey, the good stuff's up there. Once they stopped going to the one down below, what they instituted was when one of the chimpanzees would go up to do it, to hit the thing, they'd hose them down like a motherfucker with a hose, with water pressure, like a fire hose. So, and it'd fall down and get hurt, and it sucked, right? Well, so what they started doing was the monkeys would start going up, right? So then every time they did, they'd hose them down. Well, after a while, they learned. Fuck all that. I'm not even trying that. I'm going to take my little cookie and I'll be fine. And what they wound up doing was they would introduce a new monkey, okay? And they'd pull a monkey out, right? And they'd introduce a monkey. And what they had noticed was that after a while, one of the monkeys would be like, "God damn it, I really want the good stuff." And he'd try to get up there to that. And the other monkeys tear his ass down because they'd hose everybody else as well. Maybe not as bad as they hosed him, but they'd hose everybody else as well. So the other chimpanzees were like, "Fuck that, don't let that dude up there."
The old crab in a barrel trick.
Right. So then they bring in another they take a chimpanzee out and bring another chimpanzee in. And so this chimpanzee, of course, he's like, "Oh shit, there's some stuff up there too. I'm gonna go check that out." And the other chimpanzees tear his ass down and won't let him go up there. Anyway, over time, they eventually removed all of the chimpanzees that were in that initial study, that were initially in there. And so you have 10 chimpanzees, ain't never had a goddamn thing from the top, and will not let anyone go up to touch that top piece of food that tastes good and is good.
Oh, because they've at that point they've gotten it to where none of the new ones have ever even gone up to try, right. But they've just seen that apparently we're not supposed to go up there because the other people keep knocking us down when we try, so we're not even going to try anymore.
They have done that with us as well. They have taught us over time that it is okay to pay a little bit of taxes. You got to put up with a little bit of bullshit, but do not try to get up and get freedom. Do not try to have real freedom or you get hosed down. And so what's happened is, like, over the last year or two, whether or not someone agrees with Adam Kokesh or not, the third most third largest party in the United States had a contender, a real contender. He didn't win, but he was a contender whose sole
I see where you're going. This is brilliant.
right, whose sole policy was to dissolve the federal government. At the same time, you have people in France getting fucking jiggy out in the middle of the fucking in
right, the yellow
Paris and
vests,
all
yeah,
over the place
right,
wearing yellow vests. You got
Right.
people in Hong Kong fucking saying, fuck your government, I am done with this shit. Managed to get rid of that, didn't they? They hosed
Right.
us the fuck off. They brought out the hose, some chimpanzee named Adam Kokesh, and
Yeah.
this other chimpanzee named whatever the fuck the guy's name over in France is, and then the Hong Kong people, they needed to hose their asses down because we started to climb that fucking ladder again.
Yeah.
What we have to do as a movement and as a people is we have to say, fuck you, you can hose me down, I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to get to that goddamn food because it is my fucking birthright, and that's what I'm going to do.
Ah, damn. Marcus going off.
Yeah.
No, but that was, go ahead, Nicco.
I want to touch on something before I left. So, or before we all disbanded, but that was hot shit, Marcus.
It's all good.
Yeah, that was. But it's what is it? I was having this conversation with my cousin yesterday, and we are agreeing to disagree in certain matters and aspects. But it's what was it? I think we were going on about how what was it? I think well, we were talking about the LGBTQ. I really don't want your channel to get shot, but we were talking about it in the sense of how there's certain things you can push out there and certain things you can't push. Or you know what? Let me push that to the side and bring the basketball to the forefront. Have you guys heard that, like, there's basketball players that are like, yeah, we should focus on the Black Lives Matter stuff. And then there's other ones that are like, I want to play my basketball. Because I personally think they're just worried about their check. And granted, you can spend your time with basketball and then do your little social activism, but you're not helping the collective pursue.
Yeah.
You know, now you guys got thinking about, oh, is LeBron dropping 23 points? On the other hand, or is LeBron dropping 23 million? Let me go help him with what he's doing. Everything gets so misconstrued, and like you're diverged into these different lanes where people don't know what to believe. So another thing is, like, I was telling my cousin, I was like, yo, this COVID stuff, you should do your research. just do a little bit of research and you'll find it's not as bad as what you think or what you've been told. He was like, nah, bro, like, I still can't trust it. And I understand it. Like, you can't, like, take something like this so lightly when you have elders and when you go to elders. So, like, my grandmother's 87, 88, kicking, and, like, it's, like, she still sits in the house with the mask on. And, like, I have to be wary some of, like, coming around. I haven't kissed my grandmother in 3 months.
Yeah, that's tough.
And so I keep telling you, I'm like, yo, it's people who are old and like don't have good immune systems. And yeah, there's those anomalies who they were young and robust, but did you check on what all was going on with them?
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, then pretty much the majority of all of America would be eradicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there were actually a lot of similarities that I heard, and this kind of like, it was like a flash, and it like came up, and then I never saw it again. There are a lot of similarities between the respiratory issues that some of the younger people were showing and experiencing that didn't have like a whole lot of other stuff going on, but they either vaped or the symptoms that they had were just like the stuff that was happening with like the vape stuff, where people were like, they were pulling moisture into their lungs at higher rates,
right.
Stuff like that. And so it's like, oh, okay. So like 2-3 years ago, when there was like the vape crate, we got to shut down Juuls and all this other kind of stuff, you know, that was the thing. They're like, wait a second, like, we can just like pretend like that doesn't exist anymore, and we could just blame it all on COVID. It's like, oh, well, that's convenient. So I don't know how many like vaping deaths we've had, but I haven't heard about any in the last 6 months.
They won't tell you.
Right. So, but
one thing I want to really dive down just a little bit on, Nicco, and I'm not trying to call you out or anything like that, but you backed off a little while earlier. Fuck YouTube. If they fucking ban our asses, fuck them. We'll go to BitChute. It'd be all right. I already have the account.
Marcus, this is not my channel. I would blow my channel up.
Marcus doesn't give a shit. Marcus don't give a fuck. That's what he's saying. Marcus saying
now it's partly your channel. All right, just in part that shit right.
No, so what he's saying is like if you don't say it, it's worse.
Right. Okay. All right.
So just don't just let
us know. I mean, look, I'm not gonna go on and say something and then later on apologize about it. I just need to make sure what I say is formally it's put together.
Yeah.
So that through. Even if you throw a bomb, I'm not assaulting at anybody's kneecaps. I'm gonna just let you know, watch your kneecaps. Like that's just all it is.
Right.
All I'm saying is, if you want to if you don't want to say some shit, you change your mind. Okay, I understand. I do that shit all the time. Do not worry about me. Do not worry about this channel. At any moment, because of the topics we talk about, they could shut us the fuck down right now.
Yeah.
There are other ways.
Yeah, we're like legit talking about anarchy like almost all the time. So it's like
legit.
The name of the channel is like Aquarian Anarchy. So and by the way, I realized that I was like a cusper. I'm like the day after or the day before the golden day of Aquarius. But I think so. I think that counts, right? What's that? I'm Capricorn. Oh, Nicco is. Would you say you were?
I'm a Gemini.
Gemini.
I'm a Gemini on the cusp. So I was born June 20th, so I'm like Gemini and Cancer.
Oh shit! Happy birthday in a couple of days, man. You got 4 days.
I forgot about it. And
damn.
So it's like, hey, man, all this going on, I ain't worried about my birthday. It's another day around the corner.
Right on.
Appreciate it though. Appreciate it.
But no, but like so what you were saying, there's a lot of that. If you think about even think about like how like this protesting thing has. My wife was telling me about how we're planning this 4th of July party, right? Like we're trying to get people together, and it's ironic, isn't it, that like we're worried about we're not worried, but we want to make sure like our guests are not like worried about this shit. But like what if somebody calls the cops on us because we have like 50 people or something like that?
Yeah.
And so there's these memes going around where it's like no gatherings over 50 people unless it's a protest, and then it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're protesting. We're just
unless you're protesting not being able to have gatherings over 50 people. If you're doing that, then fuck you. You don't deserve to. It's like this. If you really think about the mind fuck of like all this stuff, it's like this weird, and that's where like again, because I posted this video this week where I kind of equated this whole conservative pushback to the protesting and all that stuff. And I get like if you want to say like, hey, don't burn shit down, okay, whatever, like that's fine, but I don't agree with destroying other people's property because you're mad. You want to go like to like the place where like the people who actually did the shit and like demand action from them and like start making a ruckus and stirring shit up and maybe even putting some serious physical pressure on them. Yeah, that's one thing, but like the target, like I don't get it, but whatever. We do the U.S. government does a whole bunch of retarded ass shit too. But the video that I made was about, so people are like, oh, it's ridiculous. Oh, cops don't do this. And what about black on black crime? And what about the abortion rate in the black community and all this stuff? And I'm like, okay, so let's just say like, because I made this analogy of like, I went to a school in the country, all white people, but school in the country, 19 people in my 6th grade class. And I think there were 18 seniors in the graduating class. I mean, I don't remember what the breakdown was, but let's just say it was 9 girls, 9 boys. You want to guess how many of the girls were pregnant at graduation?
All of them?
No, it was 6. But it was almost all of them. There wasn't much to do over there but like drink and fuck. So it was like, it was. But anyway,
it just goes to show
yeah. So there's this. So there's that, and like just like black on black crime. If my son is involved in some shit where like his friend got killed and he's talking about, like, give me the gun, Trey, that's a thing that a father and his son handles, or a parent and their kid handles, where you try to manage that on your own. And you say like, hey, look, I see what those other girls did. They got pregnant. You don't need to be doing that stuff. That's something that you handle, but nobody goes out and protests and takes to the streets for that. So like, but the thing is, people completely miss the fact that like when something like that happens, where there's a drive-by or anything like that, people get pissed off, and they like go and they demand that the people who did it get caught and brought to justice, because they've got and they have a memorial and a funeral, and their people wear shirts. And so we had a guy, basketball player for LSU that got killed, and like there were the place where my sons play is a league where he played. Mm-hmm. And like everybody in that whole league, I mean, everybody had shirts and like wore his number and all that. So it's like, this isn't some sort of thing where it only matters when a cop kills somebody, first of all. But typically when like teenage pregnancy happens, there's not a whole lot of like protesting in the streets about it. Okay. But to bring it back to like the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin thing, imagine if instead of just teenage pregnancy, a teacher's raping a kid and there's 3 or 4 other teachers just watching and like keeping the other students away from like stopping him from raping this, somebody's daughter or something like that. And then the administration doesn't really do anything about it. They wait 3 or 4 days and then they fire the teacher. And then maybe, after a week, they finally like bring charges and actually bring the guy in. Do you think maybe people might get upset and might act a little differently than they do when just kids are kids and people get pregnant or something? It's not the same thing. So some of the pushback that I got was, the stats are stats. Facts don't care about your feelings and all this other kind of bullshit. And I'm like, yeah, but not being an asshole when like some shit happened and like you're completely missing the whole point that when someone who's in a position where their supposed job is to protect and serve, and instead they're kneeling on someone's neck for 10 minutes, that's not protection or serving. That's not right. And that's not the same thing as 2 people who get into a dispute over who owes who money or something like that, and it comes to blows. And while it's still bad, it's still tragic, like it's not the same thing. Like you cannot possibly draw a parallel. Like 2 kids in school might get in a fight. I got in a fight when I was in the 4th grade. I got in a fight when I was in 6th. I didn't get in any more fights after that. The fight I got in a fight with a dude that lasted the entire day. We ended up being best friends, but we had a fight that lasted all day in 6th grade. Every recess, we would go behind the bathrooms and we just beat the shit out of each other. And everybody was watching. Like we had like a crowd around us. There were people like watching out for teachers and all this stuff. But anyway, if a teacher beats the shit out of your kid, it's a different thing, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
No, like it's if a teacher's taking your kid behind the bathroom at recess and punching him in the face and putting him in a headlock and all this kind of stuff, it's not the same as when he's doing that with one of his friends.
Right.
Or not even friend, just one of his classmates. So that's where like the disconnect is with people, where they think that like it's, yeah, okay, I realize, death is death and violence is violence, and it's all bad. But when you have someone who's acting in a position where they, number one, have a monopoly on the use of force, and they are using that, and they murder someone when their supposed job is to protect and serve, and you find out that the reason why the guy's getting his neck knelt on is because of counterfeit money.
That wasn't the reason.
Huh?
That wasn't the reason. That maybe was the reason they came up with.
Oh yeah. But I'm just saying, like it's when or Eric Garner, gets choked to death for selling cigarettes. Alton Sterling was selling bootleg CDs. And I don't know what he had in his pocket, but they said, he was reaching for a gun in his pocket. Hell, they're like all on top of him and everything. It's just that was in Baton Rouge. It goes to this other place where you when you have conversations with these people, it kind of gives. It's funny because the reason I brought this up is you were talking about the thing with your cousin and how you have some of these topics that you just kind of choose to agree to disagree. I've had some friends and some of the people who replied to that video that I made, and they want to keep going back to this thing about like, oh, this is all orchestrated and it's just to pit people against each other and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, so your response to not show any compassion whatsoever and to not say, yeah, it's wrong that he was killed. That's all you have to say. It's wrong that he was killed and it's a tragedy. And I don't have to make him a hero or a martyr or anything like that to say that he should not be killed and that cop should definitely be brought to justice. And it's a symbol and an example of something that is all too familiar of, first and foremost, black people with the police, but also like all of us with the police to a lesser extent, because there's white people who get murdered by cops for either there was a deaf guy who couldn't hear and he was still walking and they shot him because he was still walking because he didn't hear them telling him to stop, didn't have anything. There's this kid that was like in the hallway that they're yelling all these instructions at him, and it's all this mixed shit where it's like, put your hands up, stay down, it's like, which one? Up, down, what am I doing?
YMCA, man.
He's just like, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me. And they unloaded on him. This is a problem of us versus the state. And when you don't show compassion for people who are in pain because it's them versus the state, and you don't recognize that when it's them versus the state, it's also us against the state, and that we should be hugging them and locking arms with them to fight against that. And instead, you want to bring up all this bullshit because you want to score political points. I'm sorry, but I got no fucking time or use for you. Yeah. And so it's yeah, I don't know. It just it gets to be very, very difficult to move in this world where that's why it's so comforting to come to this place and to have the Hotep Nation chat and my little Twitter family that I can kind of put my thoughts out there, and generally it like attracts the people who are like-minded, and the people who are not like-minded, you can just ignore them or block them or mute them or whatever, and, or they just stay away on their own, So
it's funny, Chad, though. While you're telling about your two little fights and what have you, I just realized how fucking different. I mean, fully different of a childhood you and I had. I don't know about Nicco, but me, you understand. I do not know how many fights I've been in. I have no idea. It's a lot. And so we'll go there first. Now I got older and wiser and stopped aggression and all that craziness. But again, at 18, one weekend I got me a cauldron out. I'm pouring some shit in there. Fucking in the middle of the goddamn woods. Literally at 18, one weekend, I'm doing that. The next weekend, I'm running not drugs, running guns from fucking Chicago down south. And then the next weekend, me and my friends are so goddamn stoned. I think that the sun is rising up my back, and my girlfriend at the time says, "Mark, you need to move away from the heater." That's just saying. The chat, I love you, but we have quite a different growing up process.
It's beautiful that you're able to say that, because granted, I've had, instead of more so aggression, it was more so dealing with, I've had the sports that were able to help me out with that. Wrestling is more being physical, but I had to deal with like parent drama as a kid. Like I was dealing with baby mama drama as a kid. And so it's like, granted, we all had different upbringings and like different viewpoints of life. We're still able to speak on the experiences and not try and kill each other. Like we all have different viewpoints on a lot of things, but we're still similar. And it doesn't take away from the fact that we still can talk like regular and open about our opinions instead of being shunned up and shriveled up, because this day and age is a popularity contest. We don't have to be popular amongst each other, because at the end of the day, we care about the information that's being spread and able to press it and pass it amongst each other.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, and we can learn so much from each other,
I think that's
too.
a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
With that idea of unity and peace, thank you very much for watching and liking, sharing, commenting, buying t-shirts, going and getting stuff and all of that. And I appreciate anybody who's made this far. It's been a good conversation. Started with Bitcoin and rolled through all kinds of stuff. And I like it. So thank you very much, guys. And everybody, stay free.